How's it rockin', Dween Nation? This is the Dween Sports Podcast. We're about to get underway. But before we do, we'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, or share. We are posting weekly sports content, and we want to build up the brand that is Dween Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy.
What's up, Dween Nation? This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudelo, and we are here to discuss our offseason deep dive, segment that we are trying to talk about all 32 NFL teams, how their free agency has gone, how their draft needs to play out, and just how we think the rest of the offseason is going to play out for them heading into the 2025 NFL season. Today, we're talking about the AFC South, but before we dive into all of it, how you doing, my brother?
Yo, Dween Nation. Justin, it's a good day, especially when you're talking about your own team to start things off. My beloved Houston Texans, they looked, to have a great season. And there was a lot of struggles midway, but I believed them through the playoffs. But unfortunately, we were eliminated by the then AFC champions, Kansas City Chiefs. But I have a lot of hope, Justin, about my Texans. CJ Stroud is a little bit away from the spotlight this offseason compared to last offseason where you saw him in every event, every commercial, with every celebrity. This offseason's different. You only see him at the Rockets game because he lives in Houston. He is working. And Justin, hopefully CJ Stroud can lift a Lombardi trophy for the city of Houston because, Justin, we have never won a championship in the city of Houston, has never seen a football championship. We've seen a basketball championship. We've seen a baseball championship. But, Justin, collegiate-wise, professional-wise, we have never seen a championship for football. So hopefully one day we will. And hopefully it is in San Francisco in February of 2026.
Yeah, that would be really nice. I mean, the Texans haven't even made a conference championship in their tenure as a football team. So we were hoping for some progress. And I think next year they will be an improved team. It might start out slower, dude. You have a new offensive coordinator. Nick Caley is now in the building. They got rid of Bobby Slowick, which is a crazy, tremendous fall for Bobby. He was taking head coaching offers last offseason. Now he's out of a job. Well, now he's in Miami, but he was getting head coaching, offers. Now he's not. What is he? He's some sort of coordinator on the Dolphins. Right. But we got Nick Caley here. He was the tight ends coach and passing game coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams last year, which brings I would say brings a lot of excitement. Passing game coordinator, working with Sean McVay. He spent a lot of years working in New England, so he actually has a lot of experience, although he's only 42 years old. But I think this is going to bring good things for the Texans. I believe this was a CJ Stroud approved move before it was made. So quarterback's on board, new play caller in the room. Also some changes to the offense. No more Stephon Diggs. We don't see a Tank Dell. We probably won't see Tank Dell this season with his injury. But they bring in Christian Kirk. They bring in Braxton Berrios. They bring in Justin Watson. So they bring in some guys. They're not, stars or anything like we did last offseason. But some new guys in the room. We are hoping for an improved offensive line. I'll wait for my little offensive line rant after we hear some of your discussion. But what do you think so far from what we've seen with the Texans?
Well, Justin, let me say one thing first. I think our defense is poised to have a great season. I like what I saw towards the end of the season. I actually like what I saw in the loss in Arrowhead. I feel like we were able to disrupt Patrick Mahomes, and we actually got a lot of stops. And actually both matchups against Kansas City, the one I think the week before Christmas and then the one in the playoffs, we were able to disrupt Patrick Mahomes in ways that maybe Philadelphia was able to study and to use their talent and to kind of apply in the Super Bowl. And I feel like, with Danielle Hunter, he is in his prime. I think Will Anderson is entering his prime. Those are two great edge rushers. I think that D'Amico Ryans and this defense is able to develop really well. Our secondary is now, may I say, a no-fly zone, Justin, like what Denver had in 2015. And the linebacking crew is amazing. Aziz Shair, you got Henry Toto, you got the Christian Harris. He missed most of the season, but he came back. We do have Sheldon Rankins at the D-line. I just like our D-line. Settle Jr. also as well as a great pass rusher. And then our defense, our secondary, we got Stingley, we got Caleb Bullock, we got C.J. Gardner-Johnson fresh off the Super Bowl. Petrie, hopefully he's back ready to healthy. Kamari Lassiter off a great rookie year. And we still have Jimmy Ward and Ronald Derby. These guys all have a lot of experience in the playoffs. I think Darby was a part of that first Eagles Super Bowl, if I could be mistaken. But anyways, this secondary set. The linebacking crew is somewhat set. I think now, Justin, it's time to focus on the offensive line. Before I send it to you, also we have to look at the wide receiving crew. You mentioned Stephon Diggs is gone. I kind of wish we kept him, but he did tear his ACL, so it's understandable that we didn't keep him. We did get Christian Kirk, but that's only Tank Dell's replacement, so we kind of have to make up for it, right? So I think, Justin, that in this first round, we have to look at these Ohio State products. I think one of the D linemen is Jackson. The other one is Josh Simmons. And then if it's not lineman, we have to look at the receiver. So I like Ibuka there if he does fall to us. And then kind of like an emergency plan situation, maybe Matt Golden. I do believe that he has gone by our selection. I do think he probably goes 13th, 12th. Maybe he goes to San Francisco. But other than that, Justin, I think that we have to go with some Ohio State products there, whether it's those two offensive linemen or one of those wide receivers.
Yeah, no, I think you pointed out perfectly. The draft to me is focused on two things, and really one thing is that offensive line. They brought in 3 veterans: Ed Ingram, Cam Robinson, and Laken Tomlinson. But you also ship out Laramie Tunsil. You get rid of Shaq Mason. So there's just the offensive line is still one of the worst in the league, even with these new signees. These are a bunch of journeyman offensive linemen. They actually did not rank very well last year when they played. So the offensive line is going to need even more retooling. And I think really the first 2 rounds should focus on that. I know wide receiver is Nico Collins and then a bunch of like solid to average. But I really think a good offensive line for CJ Stroud is going to matter well above one more wide receiver in that room. That's personally what I believe. So yes, Josh Simmons, Gray Zabel, Donovan Jackson, Kelvin Banks. These are some guys that are going to go around that 25th overall pick where the Texans are at. And I think that could be something that should be something they look into. And I know they are as a team. But the Texans, I think they set up really well. Like, I actually really like Christian Kirk there in Houston. He comes back. You know, he played at Texas A&M, which is not too far away from Houston. Yep. And he finds himself in that Tank Dell's role, which I think currently, you know, we saw a little bit of regression from Tank Dell. I think Christian Kirk at the moment is a better wide receiver than Tank Dell. He's also a veteran, more reliable. So I know he had injury last year, Christian Kirk did, but before that he wasn't often injured. I mean, he played 8 games last year, 12 games a year. So the last 2 years for Jacksonville haven't been great, but then 17, 14. So he's most of the time he is on the field, and when he was reliable. He was the best target for Trevor Lawrence the past 2 years, you know, prior to BTJ's resurgence. But I think Christian Kirk's a good move there with Berrios and Justin Watson. Obviously, Justin Watson's got some Super Bowl pedigree now, being with the Chiefs for the last few years. I think he can step in and just be like a solid piece. No fantasy, you know, aspects around him or Berrios. But I think just guys that can get open from time to time for CJ. It's just that O-line. Because you're right, the defense is going to be hot. It's going to be nice. Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter. They just extended Danielle Hunter. Then you go to the secondary, Derek Stingley. They just extended Derek Stingley. Kamari Lassiter, Kalen Bullock had some of the best rookie seasons as a secondary player that we've seen in a long time. Like, they were great opposing Derek Stingley. And then trading for CJ Gardner-Johnson. That's a locker room guy. That's a Super Bowl guy, as you mentioned. So I think the Texans are in a really good spot as long as they keep their quarterback upright and CJ Stroud. But looking past what they really need to do, let's look at the fantasy aspects for those top guys. CJ Stroud, Joe Mixon, Nico Collins. One by one, give me your take on what you think each of them are going to show this season.
Well, Nico Collins is going to have a great season. He is, now considered one of the best receivers in the league. Christian Kirk, he could be a really solid guy. I don't know if he hits 1,000 yards, Justin, but I would say about 800 receiving yards and maybe about 6 to 7 receiving touchdowns. You know what, Justin? I like Mechie and Hutchinson to kind of step up and have pretty good seasons. I think Justin Watson could also be a really good daily fantasy guy, a guy that you can plug in every couple other weeks into your DraftKings lineup. And it's very interesting now because we haven't really talked about the tight ends, Justin. Dalton Schultz, I think he is due for a breakout season. I know he had a few in Dallas, but then I think his past second season in Houston, he's been on and off. He hasn't been the most reliable tight end like he was his first year in Houston. But Brevin Jordan, I know he tore his ACL last year. Hopefully he's back healthy, ready to go. And then Cade Stover, the guy at Ohio State who knows CJ Stroud. I think that this year in offense, even with the new offensive coordinator, they're going to need to install a double tight end formation. And I don't want to bring this up because, this was an issue in the NFL, but kind of like what New England used to do with Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. That's not the best example, granted, what Hernandez ended up being, but along the ways before Hernandez had his duo. Yeah, it was a good duo before Hernandez lost himself.
Yeah.
And RIP, but something along the lines of that, where we can have two different threats from the tight end position. But not only that, Justin, that can help in the running game, right? They can, help, run block there for Joe Mixon. And that's another thing we haven't talked about is our running backs room. Look, I like Dare Ogunbowale. He's fantastic, but I think we need a running back, a number 2 guy that can be our, pass catcher out the backfield, a guy that you can dump off some passes there. You know what, Justin? We are in the South. Indianapolis has Jonathan Taylor. We have JJ Taylor. So I feel like we have to look at maybe, let's get some new juice there. Maybe put JJ Taylor, Pierce there. He's not really been working out there in the DeMeco Ryans era. But I think that offensively, we need to not be so Nico reliant. We need to have different formations there for CJ. I think it starts with his offensive line, but I feel like we need a pass catcher out of the backfield. We don't want to run Mixon too much. He's getting up there in age, and we are going to need him for a postseason run for sure. Look at what Philly did. Saquon Barkley led them to the Super Bowl, literally had historic games in the playoffs, and we need something like that. Joe Mixon, yes, he's not Saquon's level, but he's not too far off. He is a sensational running back there, and I feel like that's what we're going to need to do as well. Develop another running back. Let's have a 1-2 punch there. Let's have different players every week there. CJ is the head of the snake there, but let's get some other players involved.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm looking at this draft board a little bit just to see, they have 4 picks in the top 3 rounds. Maybe they spin a 3rd rounder on a running back that can catch the ball. Caleb Johnson, Dylan Sampson, Devin Neal, DJ Giddens. Those are some names that can possibly make an impact to be, kind of a secondary piece in the running back room. But yeah, I think CJ is also in for a bounce back season. I do think the Texans have a solid plan to fix the O-line as best they can this year. Obviously, when you trade away Tunsil, you're like, I hope they have a plan, because if they don't, then that's a dumb trade to do. But they have a plan. Nick Casseri's a smart guy. I think they're gonna heavily use some picks in the early rounds, and I could possibly see them seeing maybe a Will Campbell or an Armand Mimbo start falling in the late teens, and they go, all right, we're going to trade up, give one of our 3rd rounders and our 1st, and jump and get the O lineman that we want. Like, I would be happy with that. So I think that they're going to be focused on O line, and then if they can, if a good wide receiver falls to them at some point in the first 2 rounds, I could totally see them jumping on that as well. But for the Texans, I'm really excited. Last year there was through the roof excitement, bringing in all the names you did. But then obviously the offense really stalled out. I think how this season will play out is it'll start a little slower as we kind of adjust to Nick Caley's offense. But I think by week 8, week 10, they're going to be the clear best team in the division, and with both sides of the ball really working. So the Texans, I'm back on board. And come on, in a down year, they still made the divisional round. So I think Houston's in a good spot. I think Mixon is a really good player to still pick up in fantasy. 4th round, where he was drafted last year, I think is the same thing. Now, the only thing for fantasy managers to maybe be wary about is I think Joe Mixon might have a similar season as he did last year, which at first you're like, well, I'll take that. I mean, he was a beast. Right. But his last 4 games, he averaged under 7 points. So, there was a clear fall off in his production. And, he's getting somewhat old. And also the offensive line was really bad, so that didn't do him any favors. But I think Joe Mixon will be a very solid piece, and he will not fall off to where he's not a startable piece for you. So Joe Mixon I like. Nico I love. He's a clear 1st-round pick to me in fantasy drafts. I think Christian Kirk is going to be one on my sleepers list for sure. I know I
Yeah.
talked about him a little bit earlier, but I think he's a clear sleeper for me. As for the tight ends that you were talking about a little earlier, I think that Brevin Jordan might be, if he's able to bounce back good from that ACL injury, he might hop Dalton Schultz. I think he's obviously, I think he's a better pass catcher. He's more explosive, like we saw in that playoff game last year. He was very explosive. Not a great blocker. I think that's why they have Dalton Schultz on the field more than they had Brevin Jordan when, that first year they were both together.
Mhm.
But they also have Cade Stover, which means, unfortunately for fantasy, it kind of muddles the room. It might be good for CJ overall, but I think for the tight ends, none of them really have bright value. So
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
kind of my thought on the tight end. And then my last little tidbit with CJ, he's not a guy I'm going to jump on in fantasy. Like, he might be a very, very solid quarterback 2 on your roster, but I'm not going to rely on him to be my quarterback 1. He just doesn't run enough.
No,
Um,
no.
and I mean, I'm hoping that O-line keeps him up front, up standing, so we can actually see more down the field passes that we saw with Nico for a number of times through the 2
Mhm.
years they've been together. But that's kind of my overall thoughts with the Texans. As of right now, are they still your clear favorite for the division?
Absolutely, Justin. I mean, with Tennessee with the first pick, they're still going to need to figure out how to develop Cam Ward. I think with Jacksonville, I mean, how good are they going to be defensively with Liam Cohen there as the head coach? And then with Indianapolis, actually, I want to say this, Justin, they're actually going to be, I want to say that they're going to be a better team this year. I was a little disappointed from some of their performances. Offensively, Justin, this feels like all they do is rely on Jonathan Taylor. And I think that they need to develop Pittman a little bit more. Maybe Alec Pierce, he had some good games. And then something that throws me off a little bit is like they're a little hesitant on AR. It's like, yeah, we drafted him with the 4th pick a few years ago, but it's like, I don't know, we like him, but it's like being in a relationship, Justin. You like the girl, you might date her, but I mean, are you gonna marry her? It's like, I don't know. It's like it's kind of like one of those things, Justin, that Indianapolis has with their quarterback. So, last year I felt better about Indianapolis. I was like, oh shoot, Justin, you better watch out. And I think I picked them to win the division. And I was like, man, I'm really this year. I'm a little, I'm taking a step back, but still don't underestimate those Colts. But
I
definitely Texans.
I mean, we'll dive into the Colts in a whole episode that you guys will be able to watch, but I do have, this is like if they don't do anything this year, that means that Anthony Richardson was a bust pick. That means Shane Steichen's probably fired, and which means the Colts are headed to a rebuild. So to me, it's either they're a playoff team or they might be starting to look elsewhere for their coach and quarterback
Yep.
heading into next year. So there's a lot on the line for the Colts, but we'll dive into that in the next episode. But thank you guys for listening, and Genoa, send us out.
Yo, Dween Nation. This was an episode talking about my beloved Houston Texans that I love so very, very, very much. But we are going to talk about the other teams in this division, as well as many, many other divisions leading up to the draft. So thank you guys for watching. We love you guys. And as always, peace.
Peace.